and welcome to another Sacred Wisdom podcast with me, Rebecca Parks, and my co-host Chris Young. And our special guest is Simon here to answer your questions on ley lines and standing stones and other related topics. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Chris to ask the first question.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Hello, Simon, and welcome to all of our viewers, and thank you to all the CC members for the questions. We received tons of questions from members worldwide, and had to pare it down. So we did combine many questions too. So hopefully your question will get answered here or perhaps in the next podcast. So, Simon, the first question is, how were ley lines created and what are they made of?
Well, ley lines are natural, they're not artificial. Although there has been artificial interference with them, but the ley lines themselves were created at the time that the Earth was created. So they go with the real estate, they go with the planet. What are they composed of? They're composed of energy and consciousness. So do not just imagine it as a conduit or a cable or a string or a line of energy that simply goes from A to Z. It is in fact a thinking, not in the sense of AI, but it's a sort of a living consciousness. That's what a ley line is.
Okay. So how deep and how high do they go?
They're not very deep. They'll generally speaking, they'll run very close to the surface. However, if there's an underground stream, which is quite deep, or caverns, they may well follow either that stream of water or the cavernous, and I don't mean an artificial one, built by a tunneling machine. I'm talking about naturally over time with water eroding the rock, or a volcanic jet of lava which has eroded and left a great cavern. So that's really the level it would be at, but mostly it's within just sort of, I would say, 3 to 6 feet of the surface, very close. And we know it's fairly close because the vegetation on the surface is affected by that, and you can see sometimes it's a more lusher grass, or it's growing a different way, or the trees are different. So it's fairly close to the surface. In terms of going up, not really, because it's not designed to activate with the atmosphere. It's only designed to activate with the rock or the soil. So it doesn't leak out beyond the Earth's crust, shall we say.
Okay, thank you. So are ley lines in a fixed location, or can they move?
They're generally fixed. They don't move in the sense that if you, like a railroad line, once it's laid down, it's laid down. But if you think about the force of a magnet, the energy that a magnet will pull out, and if you were to be able to direct that, then it might sort of move. One of the ways with digital is what we call the phased array, where you have a plate which emits digital rays, but the plate doesn't move, but the bandwidth moves, and therefore the energy can actually move. And so although the energy of the ley line can move left or right, it tends to be held in a channel, it tends to be held in a movement. So the answer is it has some movement, but not much. And then on the other point, there are spurs or sidings of unactivated ley lines, or at least the channel that which a ley line could go down, because there are generators, power generators, that power these ley lines within the earth. And please don't think of a machine producing electricity and a a little gnome busily pedaling away producing electricity. It doesn't work like that. But from time to time, in terms of movement, things can move, but only like a switch off and on, or a door that opens and closes. So you have another way, which the door is shut, suddenly the door opens, the energy can flow down that. But that's not actually moving in the sense that I think the questioner is asking. So it doesn't have free movement, as I think the questioner is asking.
Okay, thank you. Do ley lines connect Earth to any other dimensions, places or realms, etc.?
No, but that's what the elementals do. In themselves, they don't. But where they pass through a node of power and there are elementals involved, those elementals have the capability to tune in and transcend dimensions. So you could have a water world somewhere else, in another reality, with a similar type of environment in terms of organic material. Wouldn't have to be an oak tree in both locations, but would have to be some form of similar foliage or something like that, which connected the two. It's in human terms, because unfortunately everything is degraded by the time humans concept, and we have what we call in Great Britain, and I'm sure it's the case in other places, twinning. So for instance, but unfortunately it's all politics. So for instance, you would twin your city with another city, not because it necessarily is similar, but because it's a political statement. However, in the real organic world, in the natural world, you would twin an environment with a beautiful fountain or a pool of water, and you would twin that on another world with a pool of water or a fountain. So it's about that energy connection rather than any political statement. So that does happen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what keeps ley lines in optimal frequency, and what causes them to wane or not function at all?
They are actually indirectly separate from the health of the earth. If the earth were to stop existing, then they would stop as well. But they're not an indicator of the condition of the earth, because they operate as long as the earth is viable. These things are operating. So I suppose, being absolutely accurate, they are an indicator of health, because if the earth dies, they die. But what I mean is, if the earth dropped 5%, these wouldn't change 5%, or the earth increased 5%. So they are there, they exist. It's an unending piece of energy, shall we say. It's a bit like an unending stream of water. Sorry, what was the second part of that question, Chris?
What causes them to wane or not function?
Artificial interference. So for instance, if esoteric organizations were interested in diverting energy or blocking it, then they would use what loosely people would call magic in an attempt to divert it or change it. However, esoteric organizations, far from wanting to stop it, wish to tap the energy, and that's why most banks, not all, but most banks, main banks, are placed on ley lines, because it's been known for at least 200 years in the modern history that such energy brings benefits. And although money isn't an organic living creature, it still has an attachment and a magic to it, and that requires energy. So you can, and they do, benefit from placing that. I mean, I don't think that they put hospitals on ley lines because they're not bothered about people's health, but they are bothered about banks. So you can definitely find banks on ley lines. However, you would find certain churches or cathedrals think about the Rose Line going, right through. Think of Notre Dame, the Louvre, when we talk about the Rose Line, where the church over 500 years at least has had a working knowledge of where these lines are and has placed churches and cathedrals. And if you go back further than that, like places like Stonehenge in Britain on Avebury, and a couple of the big stone groupings in France, I think it's the Carnutes, they are on ley lines. Oh, and I reckon in North America as well, that will be the indigenous communities. Okay.
Thank you. So are ley lines unique to Earth, or do similar energetic networks exist on other planets as well?
A really good question. They exist on water worlds because there's an organic process going on. You would have a more basic form, say Neptune, Saturn, Mars. You would have the residual of that. But you see, if you take a planet like Mars, where there's very little organic material, there was once, of course, and therefore I don't really want to call it a dead planet, but there isn't a need for it. So ley lines are, as I said, a sign of vibrancy. It's a sign that the planet is alive. So other living planets in terms of organic material, in terms of water worlds, yes, very important.
Can I just add, thinking about it, because when you see close-ups of the moon, it looks like that's got like straight lines running from one crater to another. Presumably that's not ley lines. What could that be?
It's either going to be canals, literally. Remember that the moon is an artificial satellite, although the surface, of course, is made up of an organic material, and the surface has indeed been bombarded by meteorites. So the surface is an organic compound. It's a rock compound in that sense of the word. But of course, the moon has had interactions on it. So depending on what we're looking at, we're either looking at tunneling devices, not tunneling underground, but tunneling just above ground, creating furrows to mine the material. It could be water that's forced its way through. It could literally be meteorite impact, sending great blasts of energy out. So without looking at a particular line, but they are not ley lines. The moon does not have them. It doesn't require them. It's not a living entity.
Okay, so how can humans help maintain or restore ley lines, and do we need to?
They were set up to be self-maintained with the help of elementals. They weren't set up to be maintained by humans. Humans can assist by ensuring that any power generation points are maintained. So, for instance, stone circles are not bulldozed and a housing estate built on it, or a very idyllic sort of Garden of Eden on Earth, beautiful place, that is maintained and not poisoned. Is it important? Yeah, it is very important to maintain them in the sense that to be aware of them. But of course, the powers that be, and indeed some of the good powers that be, don't actually want the general public to be aware of it, because the very fact that these things are broadly unknown has led to their survival. Because if you take a panda bear in China, you take a panda bear in China, and nobody looks at it, because that's what you get in China. You get panda bears eating bamboo, but you take it to America or Britain and you put it in a zoo, everybody wants to come and look at it. And so I think that there's some benefit in these energy transferences being hidden, or at least the general public not being made aware of it.
Okay, thank you. So are ley lines and the grid the same thing?
Yeah, they
Um,
are.
are they really? I thought they weren't.
Oh dear, what are we going to do about that?
But I
Well,
thought like the grid, I thought the grid was more of like a control structure.
Oh no, that's not on the Earth. That's above the Earth.
Artificial.
No, no, no,
But I'm just
no,
wondering, okay, so
no.
that's a
The the
different,
gr- the, the,
okay,
the
so
grid, right? The grid is above the Earth in the atmosphere or in
mhm,
space.
mm,
The ley lines do indeed mark out a grid system, but they also make what appears on first line to be higgledy-piggledy in the sense that they don't seem to be connected, but they are. But they were in ancient times referred to as the grid. So the grid on Earth in relation to ley lines, and the grid above the Earth in relation to the net, we call it the electromagnetic trap.
okay, cool.
okay, thank you. So this is a two-part question. So the first part is historical spiritual places are said to be on positive ley lines, but is the energy from the ley line or the spiritually significant artifacts?
Right. Well, if we take Scotland and we look at some of the architecture that the Freemasons are very involved with, very interested in, you can sometimes have a place of great trauma which connects with a ley line. It will not corrupt the ley line, but what can happen is that the ley line can transmit that trauma. So like a radio signal can be carried, or a stream of light, which is a better analogy actually, a stream of light can carry information. So the ley lines can carry information, sort of riding piggyback, as a canoe sits on a big stream or rapids and the canoe is carried along. So parcels of information or feelings can also be carried along. That's been understood. It was done originally in an attempt to try to control. It didn't work. They weren't able to control it. So if energy fields, ley lines pass through areas of great trauma, they will conduct that trauma, but they won't become altered by that trauma. Okay.
Okay, so second part, how can one distinguish the difference in energy between an artifact or a ley line?
An artifact. Did you say an artifact?
Yes.
Well, an artifact is struck by the power of the ley line. So I refer to Stonehenge as an artifact, you see. That's how I would be trained. That's how I would refer to it. So some artifacts are power generators and send energy out. Some artifacts receive the energy and then they resonate at a different frequency because they've been struck by it, or they are booster signals. So they can play different roles. So it depends whether the artifact is a generator of energy, whether it's a receiver of energy, or whether it's a booster of energy. And we would have to have a specific one for me to then answer that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Are the Earth's ley lines solely created by Earth's own energy, or are there some sort of interdimensional energy manipulation at play?
No, they're created by the earth for the earth. Whatever created the earth, God at source created him. Go back to the elementals. Their job is a little bit like technicians or engineers, to tweak it and to maintain it, but not necessarily to alter it. So you have a brief for many millions of years that, you know, this thing resonates between this frequency and that frequency. It's not your job to try and change that outside of that parameter. And so the elementals will maintain it within that. I remember also that whales, literally cetaceans in the sea, play the same role as elementals in the ocean, but they are not actually interacting with ley lines, but I'll bring it in because it has a similar effect. They are interacting with the earth itself, and that is why they have that strange sound, which, you know, the whale song, that's why they have that. And the whale, when it's interacting with the earth, it sort of goes head down and then projects the sound onto the seabed, which vibrates. Now, what the whales are doing is something that the elementals are not doing in this in that effect, because the elementals are tweaking it. But what the whales are doing is actually pulling it back and really making a difference. That is why there's been quite unfortunately a plan to kill the whales, because the bad guys knew that whales were a key modulator in the frequency of the earth. So it's about one of the few things I would support Greenpeace on, because whales play a vital role in the stability of the structural integrity of the earth. Not technically ley lines, but as it's about frequency on the earth, I think I'll bring it in.
Okay, thank you. That's a good transition into the next question, which is, are ley lines confused with other concepts such as dragon lines, song lines, or energy meridians?
They are all the same thing. However, in history, it may well have been something was associated in that area, and that has taken the attention of people. So, for instance, a sleeping dragon curled up, the dragon is probably only there because just beneath it is a power generator. And just like a cat will sit next to a hot fire because cats love heat. So dragons or other entities will sit because there's a frequency energy coming from it. And over the years, thousands of years, the inhabitants, the people, won't associate it with a ley line. They'll associate it with the dragon that lives under the hill. So therefore, in different communities, in different areas, the folklore, that folk memory, is more about that than the underlying science, which is lost to those people. Okay.
Thank you. Can dowsing rods actually detect ley lines? Well, I can say they can. Do you want to elaborate on that?
It's not the dowsing rods, it's the person operating them. Some people are very good at finding underground water with their dowsing rods and would go over a whole stash of gold coins and never find them and kick themselves afterwards. So it's the individual, what they're tuned into and what their frequency is. Some people are able to detect anything outside of the standard frequency pattern that they walk over. Other people are much more in tune with metal or unseen energy, or something like that. So it's not the rods, it's the individual using them. But yes, the answer is yes. If the person is tuned into it, they'll do it.
Okay, thank you. This is another two-part question. So the first part is, what is the spiritual or energetic purpose of ley lines?
Well, the spiritual is about intent, and the energetic is about how you do it. So the answer is that when the earth was created, it had to have a system of communication from one part of the planet to the other, and a life force which maintains. So, for instance, there are loads of underground rivers on the planet, absolutely heaps, and people don't appreciate that. And that's one form of life force. And then there's the ley lines. And so they are different aspects of the need of a planet to communicate with itself and to maintain itself. and I don't think at this stage we fully understand the role they play, but we do appreciate that that they were put in at the very beginning. So it wasn't something that will be around for 1 million years and then we don't need it anymore. That is without that the planet couldn't operate.
Okay, thank you. So the second part, are the meridians of the earth like acupuncture lines or chakras, pathways for chi, life force, dragon lines, or spirit paths that carry healing, magical, or divine energy?
Right, again, it's not it's not that, it's the person doing the acupuncture. If you stick a load of pins in somebody and you did no disrespect to someone who's a construction worker, and they may be a very, very gifted spiritual construction worker, but if a general construction worker stuck 20 pins in somebody, they probably wouldn't feel much benefit from it. So again, it's like the person operating it. And if you were to walk a ley line on the earth, you could, and you were that way inclined, you could detect if there are any problems. So for instance, there could be a fault in the ground. There could be a tumbling of rocks, which could block or impede the energy in some shape or form. So any individual who can practice this sort of healing is only because they accept it and because they are capable of doing it. They've perhaps been trained to do it, but some people are just born with it. And so if the earth is a living creature, which it is, then it should be seen as no different from a living human. And the understanding that there are routeways of unseen energy or nodes of, not power, but nodes of communication which exist on the human body. And that is mirrored because the earth is not separate from a living person. And what makes us tick in a strange way is very similar to what makes the earth tick. So if you can understand one, then you can understand another. So the answer is yes, but it's about the operator. It's the operator that's very important. So AI couldn't, if AI was in charge of this, AI wouldn't have the capability to make it work, because as an artificial entity, it wouldn't be allowed to interact with a living creature with a soul. I know humans give power away, but that's generally to fly an aeroplane. So the autopilot is nothing more than a very primitive form of artificial intelligence. And that's not threatening in any shape or form. But where it does get threatening is when you're talking about living creatures and having power over living creatures other than landing an aeroplane. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So this next question is a three-part question. Firstly, can people sense or feel ley line energy?
Some people can, most people cannot. However, if you have a dowsing rod, then what it does is it triggers something that humankind has had for millennia, because before we had machines and satellites, we had to survive. And so we had to find where the water was. Literally, where's the water to drink? And so methods were devised where sensitive or psychic people were capable of finding that. Now, unfortunately, in the modern world, this is becoming a bit of a rarity because people are more interested in their cell phones or paying the mortgage on time. But there will always be a percentage of people, particularly children, who are good at this. I mean, I was trained to dowse, a very, very simple way for children to be trained. But you have to be fairly. Most people hold a rod in their hands, and then the rod will move because of what's going on. but then they would be trained that the rod has to touch their hands. But I was trained, if you take two ordinary, I don't know what we're going to trouble now in other countries, but two biro pens, I don't know whether that's going to translate to other countries, but the casings of two biros, so the plastic biro, a cheap biro, you take the inky out bit and you take the top off, and then you get a old-fashioned wire coat hanger. It has to be metal, and you bend it and you pop one in. If you are don't like the word special, if you are adept, that's a better word within the magic world, if you're an adept at it, even though you're not holding the metal, the frequency, the bio feedback from your body will force the metal to move, even though you're not holding it. So you're holding it in a free swinging environment, which is a tube, and the bioresonance feedback from you connecting with what you're searching for will make the metal. And that's how I was trained to do it.
Okay, thank you. So that's sort of elaborates on our earlier question about
You
dowsing
said there were
rods.
two more.
Yes, there are. Okay, so after can people sense or feel ley light energy? Do they cause heightened intuition, visions, peace, buzzing sensations, or altered states at intersections or along the lines?
Oh, the answer is no, not on the lines, but in intersections, what we refer to as nodes of power or switching stations. Then that is quite possible. You very rarely would pick it up as a line. You might feel it, such as I walk 3 paces to the left and I feel something's wrong, and I take 3 paces back and I pick it up, and then I take 3 paces to the right and I've lost it, that much. But in terms of anything more than that, only at intersections, power nodes or switching stations, then you would feel it, because there's a considerable amount of energy in a small, tight geographical area.
Thank you. I remember when I was doing my National Federation of Spiritual Healers training, and this was a long time ago, it'd been about 24, 25 years ago. And it was in a room in Glastonbury, which is no longer used for that purpose. But that room was at the intersection between the Michael line and the Mary line.
Right.
And because I think, ley lines are only sort of energetically different for a few feet either way. And but the intersection was in the room where we were doing our spiritual healing training, and we really learned to pick up on the energy, and also just kind of learn to cope with it, and still learn to do the spiritual healing in a room that was full
It's
of.
very interesting. I've got a question then, is that that surely is not coincidence. So who built the building and what was it originally for?
I don't know.
Right.
Honestly, I don't know. It's
That's
part of a
worth,
road. It's in a road in Glastonbury with
that's
now a
worth,
shop downstairs.
that is worth research, because
Yeah.
no way would I believe that would be easily coincidental. And then some esoteric group suddenly comes along and discovers it. Well, again, that's not coincidental. So there must be some record somewhere going back.
I'm sure.
And
Yeah.
that's why. Now, what's very interesting, what you said, is that you've got Mary and Michael, and you've got other lines that intercede. They don't always work together. So you've got a masculine energy. I mean, we haven't even talked about this, but you have a female energy. I think most of our audience don't actually appreciate that, but there's a male and a female energy form. It has to be, because that's as President Trump would say, they're the only two groups that exist on the earth. But you see, if you've got them hitting each other, what actually happens is that one passes through another. Okay. Without interference. However, there is that throw off on the sides, and very receptive humans can be irritating. It can be a bit like a buzzing. It can be annoying. It can be just not peaceful, just simply because that's what's happening. And I wouldn't recommend trying to do any work where that's occurring.
No, it's interesting. Well, we were on the first floor, so when we were
Yeah.
doing the training, so it wasn't on the ground floor. So I think
Yeah.
that would have made a difference. Um, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
interesting.
very much so.
And okay, so
Third question, or is that it?
no, there's one more to it.
Go on then.
Why do some feel drawn to travel to ancient roots?
How are you spelling roots?
Oh, Routes,
Right, okay.
ancient pathways.
Yeah. Um, Not because of the frequency, but because they probably themselves in past lives have done that themselves. Remember that the Silk Road, lots of places where in history trade or commerce has followed certain routes, and that's because there is something more to it than just how does the camel driver know uh, where to turn left when the recent sandstorm has just blown away everyone's footprints. So I think it's more to do with a person's past lives, a long time association, and are drawn to it. Rather than, oh, I'm sitting here, drinking my cup of tea, and I have a feeling for the Great Wall of China because I can hear it singing to me. No, it'll be that you actually have seen pictures of the Great Wall of China, and it does something to your head, and you think that's where I need to be. I don't know why, but I need to do that. Hadrian's Wall that divided technically Britain from Scotland in the Roman times again follows power lines. Okay.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So this is a two-part question. The first part is how were ley lines used by ancestors?
Once they understood that there was an energy that was marketable, and I don't mean make money on it, marketable in the sense that you could stick something at the end of it and it would enhance what you were doing, they then began to map it. So depending on the esoteric background of the group, so the church wanted to put its cathedrals and its larger churches there because they wanted larger congregations, they wanted to make money, etc., etc., etc. Stone Age people wanted to do it because they recognized it was a part of the earth, and they wanted to communicate with the earth, and they also wanted to be able to activate or draw certain elements when the time is right, and you build something on a ley line and it could sit there for 1,000 years and then it will activate. So previous communities who've understood this have indeed cited dwellings or camouflaged objects on the path with a plan that they will activate at a set time in the future.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I think you have answered this, but I'll ask it anyhow in case you want to add to it. So, did ancient builders intentionally align sites for spiritual power, rituals, communication with spirits, or interdimensional beings, or to harness cosmic, solar, telluric, earth currents?
Problem with the question is it goes from a spiritual standpoint to just about everything and anything. And what I mean by that is you would have to have the position of the individual and your mindset to decide what you were going to do. So for instance, the pyramids are on a ley line. And the pyramids, major pyramids were placed there for that reason. If you were seeking power in the true sense of the word, then you would build a generator like the pyramid over another node of power. So you would have a node of power on top of a node of power. You wouldn't just put a generator on top of a line unless you were able to tap into that line. And if you tapped into that line, how much of that power could you take? And would it affect, like damming a river, you take it. Well, if you don't let anything go through, then everything downstream is going to die. So it's not just a simple case of doing that, because this is not artificial energy. This is the life force of the planet. So different peoples with different agendas have done different things. But the Earth has a number of fail-safe devices, so that if something was to go wrong, there would be a backup system that would kick in, for want of a better word, and maintain that the power is generated along certain routeways. Yeah, so modern people have attempted to harness but not stop this because they wanted to benefit from it. It's not a threat to them. So esoteric magic societies would want to understand it, learn about it, and work with it rather than try to control it.
Okay, thank you. This next question has two parts and also encompasses a wide range of things. So the first question is, are ley lines linked to sacred geometry, UFOs and aliens, Atlantis, or global energy grids?
Oh, no, too many questions.
Okay.
Just one at a time, please. Start with the first one.
Geometry.
No, no, they're not.
Okay.
Next one.
UFOs, aliens.
No.
Atlantis.
Yes.
Why? How?
Because Atlantis was very much into crystals, a crystalline city. And if you were to put quartz crystals on a ley line or near it, then you could do things with the crystal. So it was beneficial for a community that used crystals for not just communication, but for transmutation into other dimensions. So they were into that, and being a female-dominated society, they fully understood that level of communication. What came after Atlantis?
Global energy grids. So I'm guessing that's more unnatural.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's unnatural. So the answer is no.
Okay. And do they form a planetary network connecting major sacred sites worldwide? For example, the pyramids, Uluru, Stonehenge, different.
Yes, but not on the lines that I talked about, the grid, you see, and we got a bit confused on that, didn't we? The ley lines that people understand are the ley lines that they've been able to map in recent history. But there is a grid, and I did try to explain there was a grid. There's a lesser grid which people are not aware of, and that is the grid that connects out. So you don't get all the major locations connected by Mary Line or Michael Line or Rose Line, but they have branches coming off them which people haven't mapped and are not aware of generally, and we call that the grid. And so yes, every important location on the Earth is connected via this separate, almost, it's not quite separate because it's connected, but it's at arm's length connection from the major sources.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So can ley lines be compared to the meridian system within us humans? And if so, are there chakras as well, and where are they located?
But loosely, very loosely, slightly different in terms of what one does for the human body and what one does for the Earth. And also because we have to be a bit ambivalent about chakras, because they are open to hijacking and hacking and attack. And the Earth one is actually more secure. All right, so the Earth system is more secure, but they have a similarity, but I wouldn't want to stress that similarity made them identical. The similarity is simply that power or energy or communication is transferred from one area to another, and there are, you call them chakras for the body, of course. I'm calling it on the earth for nodes of power, or nexus points, which don't have the color vibration of the chakras or the physical aspect we would attribute the dominance of those chakras. The ones on the earth are much more about just energy, full stop. But yes, it's the same thing of a living creature having this. You know, the best way I describe it, and that's why we have to be very, very careful with chakras. And of course, Becky plays the flute. But if you think of a flute and then the keys, and then you can play music and you can press the keys, I want you to think of the human chakras as those keys. And that's why they can be hackable. So if you pressing the keys, then you are altering the flow of energy through those different holes, those different keys, and therefore you can affect the physical body. And that's an interesting way, I think, for people to start thinking about how chakras work. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Do ley lines influence materials in the earth, such as gold or minerals? And if so, how do they interact?
Right. They don't do that. The energies are there because that route way was chosen when the earth was created as perhaps the quickest or the simplest way from A onwards to Z. But if you have highly conductive material like gold in the soil or the rocks, then you would have a different note. If you're going through Cornwall and you're going through granite, you've got an awful lot of feldspar and quartz crystal, and people shouldn't just think of great, heavy, solid granite and how it might affect it, because it's the crystals in the rock that play the part here. And that's what's so important. So if you've got rock that's got a lot of crystalline structure to it, it will basically transmit that faster at a higher frequency. But I don't know of any gold fields, you know. I mean, I just think that it's about crystals rather than metals that have the effect.
So it's not that the ley lines influence the materials in the earth, but the materials in the earth can influence the ley lines.
Well, they can enhance it if you run an electric current through certain different densities. I'm sure that with the right equipment, you could read slight variations coming out the other side. And I think, and the further the distance, the greater the variance. And that's what I'm saying. That's what would happen. Yeah. So you might find in some environments the energy loss is much less than in other areas.
Okay, thank you. So what impact does fracking or
It's
the
a good question. It's a very,
extraction?
very good question. It was of grave concern precisely because of that. And here we have the needs of a nation, the United States of America, to become fuel independent, as opposed to concerns about, you know, how it might impact the earth. And this is the difference between, you know, Caesar and God. In other words, you know, that which is the earthly power is the you know, it's the rule of law, and that which is not is the rule of the law above. There is a strong feeling amongst those people who are very knowledgeable that the earth will repair itself and is a living entity, and it's not going to do too much effect. I personally wouldn't wouldn't do fracking. I personally think it's not helpful.
Mm. But it's the same with mining, isn't it? And maybe also earthquakes.
Fracking is probably more difficult. No, I'm not concerned about mining. I'm not concerned about earthquakes, but fracking is, because you see, it's the water that's polluted that's used, injecting into it. That's the problem I have.
I'm just thinking on that. So if there's a ley line and someone does a mine, whether it's a coal mine or whatever, and they dig right down, so maybe, I don't know, 50 or
Well,
100 feet down.
you'd have to form a break, like a fire break. You'd have to form a gap. So literally, if
Yeah.
you
So
imagine
if
your
there
ley
was a
line,
gap, would the ley line energetically just still cross the gap in the space, or would it go down to the land and go back up again?
right, water will always find the quickest way down, won't it? So if you're pouring a jug of water on a mountain, you can be sure that it's going to go downwards, not upwards. What it will tend to do is it will quite the same with the Tesla experiments, but if you were to arc electricity, it tries to find it, and of course with lightning, it tempts to find an earth. It attempts to find water vapor. So what would happen is that remember I said this is a consciousness to this, and it will attempt to reconnect. I do not know whether it would reconnect immediately or would reconnect over time. I believe that because naturally such breakages could occur, therefore there is a natural response to it. If you bring on something that there's been no planning for, then there's no answer to it. But as you said, there could easily be a rock fall or an earthquake or a fault. Something happened, and then that earth connection goes, a big landslip. Well, what will happen is the energy field will, from the source, wherever it's coming from, will actually go at an angle and try and go under the damage and reconnect. In fact, if I use my hands, it's probably better to do it. I don't know if you can see me, so I've only got a bit of camera here. I can't see what I'm doing. Let me just...
No, we can see clearly.
Okay, all right. So if you've got the gap here, this is the gap. Both sides would attempt to do this to reconnect. Okay.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that.
Right, great.
So Chris, I'm just going to hop a question because I want to ask this next one. Are crop circles related to ley lines? And why are there so many crop circles in England, particularly in Wiltshire?
Right. Now, the answer is not. Most crop circles are either genuinely non-human communication, so alien creation. However, some are satanic, by satanic forces on Earth. And I actually had the displeasure of meeting somebody whose job was to make false crop circles. And some crop circles are indeed created by the consciousness of the earth. It's a really good point about Britain. There's two things for this. One, in the particular chalky ground that these crop circles are found, as a very large amount of either bits of silica or crystal. And when these crop circles are being made by non-human agencies, they require the quartz crystal or the silica in the topsoil to take the resonance, which then affects the RNA. I think it's RNA in a corn, isn't it? It's not DNA in a corn, which then affects that and rewrites that.
Yeah, it can be
Sorry?
DNA or RNA.
DNA, I can't
DNA
remember.
and RNA in every cell.
Right, okay. So it's that which affects that and changes the cell, so it causes the plant, the stem of corn, to bend over. But it's because of this unique soil in that part of Great Britain that has a great deal of crystal, which means that when hit by these frequencies, resonate in the crystal and causes the corn's DNA, RNA to actually alter. And that's why they bend over, because they are receiving instructions to do so. So yeah, mostly They are. And the other thing is that in Britain, there was a group set up to communicate with another group. So aliens were communicating with an earthbound group, and they were communicating via these pictograms. Most circles are actually information encoded. And there was a group in Britain coding and decoding and then going out and replying by doing it. So it's a topic all on its own. And I've been quite involved with that. I'm very privileged to have watched a real video of alien craft doing it. The unpleasant but still very interesting to talk to Team Satan. Team Satan, a group of Satanists whose job was to go out in the Wiltshire area, create fake crop circles so that when spiritual people went in to a crop circle, they were attacked. I don't mean physically attacked, I mean demonically attacked. So I always said to people, don't go to a crop circle unless you know it's been created by, you know, either an alien force. Often what would happen was the energy creatures, the smoke men, they're sometimes called, or the shadow beings would come down, and they would then lay it out, and then Team Satan would literally go and follow them. And that's what I was told, that they would wait for these entities to arrive, and then they would follow them and they would do it. So it's quite interesting. It's a real battle between two forces, but that's a topic all on its own. And maybe I'll talk about that at Kerry Cassidy's conference. Who knows?
Crop circles.
I'm gonna have to stop fairly soon, guys.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Just yeah, crop circles is a very popular topic in Britain, isn't it? Especially this time of year. And we've seen footage also of like golden balls rushing around and doing that, and some things.
Well, that is
connection of the alien and the earth energy together.
Well, the balls are not. The balls are alien. The balls are alien. When the earth does it, it doesn't do it from above. It does it from underneath. So when the earth created it, it affects the roots of the plant from underneath. So it's the earth communicating upwards. When the alien technology, it's from the top being beamed down. So they're both different. But the ball ones, which Win Keach was very privileged to film that. That is definitely non-human at work. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want one more question?
Go on then.
Okay. Yeah. This might be an easy one. Do the inner Earth civilizations make use of ley lines, and if so, in what way?
No, they don't, because the inner Earth is below the ley line grid. So, earlier on I talked about that this is fairly near the surface, and the inner Earth peoples tend to be, except the entrances and exits are deeper. So it's a different form. The ley lines are a communication for the planet which runs within a very few feet of the surface. There are other forms of energy which move, but they're not carrying communication. So the answer is no. The peoples of the hollow earth, the inner earth, they're not. That's not their role. They're not involved in that. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I know that you're on limited time today, and we
We
have
could
a
do
lot.
another one, next week.
Yeah, so we'll record another podcast, maybe just about 45-minute long, to do a top up to this one. It's been a great topic, and thank you very much for all your.
I love the questions. I know you guys went through, both you and Chris, to pick out the questions that perhaps could generate a more interesting answer. And I thought the questions were very, very good. And the fact that I'm sure that a lot of what I've said people haven't heard before. That's a testament to the questions, because the questions are asking something that unfortunately most people on YouTube or Telegram or Twitter or whatever it is, they don't ask those in-depth questions. They're not at that level. So what our audience, our members, have done is come up with in-depth questions, which have not forced me, because I'm here because I want to be here, but have required me to give answers to that level. And if it gets people doing their own research and to go on, then I'd be very pleased. Do you remember that in Great Britain, there was, what was it, 1912, 1930, when the first real understandings in the modern history all been forgotten? You see, like many of these things, they have them and they forget, and then the more modern times and I think it was in the 1930s that they began to map them, and people were realizing, well, why is that church there and that church there, and what's that, and looking at the connection between not just the earth, but not Fred has built a shed, but certain buildings or towers or stone circles where there seemed to be a line. And it was in the 1970s that this really took off. And, people used to go to a certain shop, which doesn't exist anymore, and buy an ordnance survey map and then get the ruler out and draw the line across it. And absolutely, you could draw these lines and you could think, wow, it's a tumulus. There's an old Roman fort. There's an old deserted medieval village. There's a Roman villa. There's this, that, and the other. And suddenly people were finding that all of these things on this one line. So it shows us that the people of ages gone by actually had more knowledge than the wider population today.
Another good question would be, are Roman roads built on ley lines?
No.
So straight.
This really, really good question. They're not. It was a completely different method of just how do I get to A to B quicker. But the Romans were, through the Greeks, aware of the Romans themselves were very engineering, mechanical, less spiritual actually, and more into power and control. Whereas if you go back to the Greeks and before them, to the triangle times of Iran and Iraq, Egypt, they were much more in connection with the energies. So by the time of the Romans, it was very much of a physical. So no, unfortunately, the Romans had lost that aspect to it.
All right. I'll hand it to Chris to wind up today then.
Okay, thank you, Becky, and thank you so much, Simon. This was